Welcome to Mershman Seeds Cup of Joe. On this episode, Amy Niver from Rosen's joins us to talk about additional insecticides and fungicides that can be applied at planting to boost yield initially and continue throughout the growing season. Amy also gives her insight on what's going on in the chemical world concerning supply. Stick around for Joe's corny jokes.
Hi, this is Joe Mershman. Welcome to Mershman Seeds Cup of Joe. Today, Ben and I have a special guest, Amy Niver from Rosen's, which is a large independent chemical distributor for the United States. So with that, Amy, you're here today. We want to talk to you about a different area that we normally have not talked about, and that is fungicides and insecticides put on with the planter, either in furrow or 2x2. So, Amy, before we start, just give us a little background of what you do at Rosen's and your experience.
I work for Ag Chem Distribution, which means I sell everything, and I look after the seed treatment pillar for Rosen's, and I'm also a plant pathologist. So things like tar spot and white mold and new fungicides are some of the things that I look after.
Very good. Amy is our supplier for our seed treatment and is one of our consultants that helps us put together our package that is unlike anything out there in the industry. In fact, we are the only company that uses a seed treatment that is not company line. In other words, we put together the best of the best, which is unlike other companies out there that either use a certain brand all the way through with all their components, where we're putting an all-star lineup together in our seed treatment. So that's one of the things that Amy brings to the table to us because of the fact that they represent all the products out there. So with that, Ben's got a lot of questions today about, he's noticing like some of these top yield producers in yield contests are using certain products. Both of them are either a fungicide or insecticide more than what we can put on the seed. So go ahead, Ben.
Yeah, so basically in the market, there's a lot of noise right now, and it's slowly been progressing. There's different products that are happening in furrow, and some of the things that can be put in furrow are like humics and fulvics, plant growth hormones, inoculants, fungicide and bacterias, insecticides and fungicides, amino acids, nitrogen replacements. All of these things are making a big splash right now. And one of the things that some other agronomists have been recommending and some of these top yield winners have been talking about are some of these insecticide fungicides in furrow. Let's talk about a unique one first, Amy. What is your experience that you've seen with the Zyway fungicide? It's an in-furrow fungicide. We hear a lot of guys talking about it.
Who's that from, Ben?
That's an FMC product.
Okay.
So that Zyway fungicide, it's unique in the fact that it actually translocates up the plant. And why don't you talk just a little bit about that product and how it's unique in the industry?
It's a relatively new fungicide from FMC, Top Guard or flutriafol. It's unique to them, and one of the really cool things about it is it sticks around for forever. So like you said, it translocates through the plant. It sticks around for a very long time because it's not UV sensitive like some of the strobilurins are. And then it is very broad spectrum. So it covers a wide variety of diseases. It's not just gray leaf spot and northern corn leaf blight. It's also things like rusts and tar spot. And then it's also super active on those diseases. So it's not uncommon to have a fungicide that will be effective on a wide variety of diseases, but it's not really good at it. It just kind of dings all of them. But Zyway is very good on all of them, and it has a broad spectrum, and it sticks around for a very long time. So the concept that you can put it down as an in-furrow and it will impact foliar diseases after R1 was pretty taboo last year. But now that everyone's seen it, it does. It does stick around all season, and it does help with your foliar diseases, your stalk rots and your crown rots. And we see a lot of yield coming from it just because it's really helping combat any of those fungi that are on your corn.
So let's talk just a little bit about, if customers, I think I read a stat that 30% of the acres have the ability to put something on in furrow or 2x2. So it's a smaller portion of the market. what is your ideal recommendation in the placement of that product? Because 2 years ago when the product, was in initial launch, and then last year, like you said, a lot of people got to use it. They kind of talk about it being kind of hot when it's directly on the seed. So what's your preferred method? And I know they have a Freedom, they have their own program where you can get a system bought where they foam it into the side of the trench. What's your preferred method?
As with many things that are amazing, there's always a downside, right? And the downside of Zyway is the flutriafol molecule itself is very spicy on the seed. You will not see it as a seed treatment for that reason. It delays germination, and cooler conditions will exacerbate that. So if your soil temperatures are below 70 degrees, it's kind of like Raxil on the seed. It delays the germ and gives you uneven stands. So one is the flutriafol molecule, because it's so systemic, because it's so active, it can be hot on the seed. And then the other piece is the rate that you have to use to get that late season efficacy is very, very high. So the rate per acre is the same, whether you put it in the furrow or you spray it at brown silk. So the amount of active you're putting down for a 6 to 10 foot tall plant, when you put it in the furrow, you're putting that same amount around the seed. So the recommendation is if there's any way you cannot put it in the furrow so that the seed is touching it, you have to do that. 2x2, 2x2x2. They have a foaming formulation. You can put it over the top. You can Y drop it. The Zyway sticks in the soil solution. So you don't have to get it into contact with the plant immediately. You just have to get it into the soil solution so that as the plant root mass grows, it will come in contact with it and bring it into its plant mass. So you're just trying to get it into the soil around the plant. In furrow, people think is the easiest, right? Because everyone has that equipment, but particularly with Zyway, you got to keep it off the seed for your corn because it will cause variable stands.
Okay, so one last question, then we can rotate to one of the next style products. This past year, we had a lot of crown rot diseases. We had a lot of standability issues late in season. We had a lot of late season diseases move in and really hinder products. Is Zyway going to be one of those that's going to help us with our standability, to keep that plant intact longer in season?
It absolutely is. There's 2 molecules on the market that will do that. Zyway is one, and then Avedo or Tapera Plus, which has fluoxystrobin in it. Those are the 2 fungicides that you can put down as an in-furrow and will impact your later season crown and stalk rots.
Amy, how long will this this in-furrow, pardon me, I should say 2x2 would be best, treatment last? How long, when would it run out, you basically?
Well, it never really goes away. Once it's in the plant, it's still having efficacy at brown silk. The problem is it gets diluted, right? So it becomes, you still have to do foliar applications because the product becomes so dilute, but it's still there throughout the season helping the plant. It's extremely rare because it's not UV sensitive. Nothing degrades it. The plant will metabolize it, but it will still be there.
So potentially somebody that's using a 2-pass system for fungicide, this could eliminate the first pass?
Yep, that's the idea. If you can get it 2x2x2, one of those 2 molecules, then you can wait until brown silk. You can wait until after tassel to get your foliar fungicide down and have pretty decent control of your diseases.
So you think it's going to be pretty, as a very good preventive for tar spot if it gets started early? Yes,
because with tar spot, the problem is we're not spraying early enough, because it's more like a rust than it is like a lesion, where if you wait to spray until you see tar spot, it's too late. Where the other diseases, if you see them and then you spray, the fungicides freeze them in their tracks, where we can't freeze tar spot. We don't have enough efficacy where we can spray and it stops it. So you have to spray before you see it. So that means the ideal spray time is really VT or V8 to V10, and then you need another one at brown silk anyways. So this is trying to give you efficacy where you don't have to go out between V8 and VT. You can just put an R1 or a brown silk application down and you have pretty adequate. You're not going to control tar spot, but you're going to significantly reduce it.
Well, I see some real advantages from the genetics too, because a lot of the high yielders that we have in the industry typically are weaker on stock quality from diseases, and also maybe even foliar too. So, if you want to get the most horsepower out of it, use and then protect it, it could come into play that you could make a better hybrid out of these weaker hybrids that have high yields.
Yeah, definitely helps build a defense on a very racy style hybrid. So what were those two actives again, Amy, so that our viewers can go back and look back at the two actives that work similar here?
Flutriafol, that's the one that's in Zyway, which is also known as Top Guard. And then fluoxystrobin, which is known as Avedo or Tapera Plus. Those are the two that you can use. Now, Tapera and Tapera Plus do not have the phyto issues. You can put those in the furrow just fine, and you don't have the seed safety issues. It tends to not stick around as long as the flutriafol, so it's safer on the seed, but it doesn't have as much horsepower. The Zyway has way more horsepower, but you got to keep it off the seed.
Yeah, normally I'd be taking notes. So
yeah, we
had
got
to double
recorded,
check.
right?
Yeah, that's right. So switching gears just a little bit, with rootworm being as big of an issue as it has been, we're seeing a lot of guys switch to using insecticides back in furrow to try to control rootworm and some wireworm and maybe some of the other insects that are out there. There's a whole host of bifenthrin mixes that are on the market, and what we're starting to see become more popular is these Bacillus amylase style strains of bacteria. So let's talk just a little bit about bifenthrin first, or generic capture, or wherever you want to go from there, and then hit on the Bacillus amylase a little bit.
Okay. With the bifenthrins, the key with those, I'm also a big formulation person, right? And with the bifenthrins, I think the formulation with those is just as important as it is in the seed treatment world. You get what you pay for when it comes to those in terms of variability of coming out of your equipment, in terms of getting the rate on there that you want to be using, compatibility with your fertilizers, with the other fungicides you're putting it with. It is a good option for managing rootworm that helps bolster your traits and the seed treatment that you have on there.
Awesome. So that's the capture is obviously very important, but what are we getting out of like a product like Ethos XB, which has the Bacillus amylase strains in it?
So you're right, biologicals are a big deal these days. They've been around for a very long time. And one of the things that's happened here in the last 5 years is the technology of how we produce them has gotten a lot better. Where it used to be a bug was a bug was a bug, and if it worked, it worked. There was a lot of variability in them. We were super focused on getting them to be stable in formulations, and then efficacy was an afterthought. And now things like Ethos, we've got bugs that we've learned how to produce. We know how to keep them in a jug for 2 years and it not be detrimental. And then when we bring them to the field, they actually wake up and do things. And it's not just forming a biofilm around the plant mass. That Ethos product actually attacks Rhizoctonia. It specifically goes after fungal hyphae. And it's not just Rhizoctonia. There's all kinds of other pathogens and what we call junk fungi, eating on the plants that Ethos specifically eats. It's a fungal scavenger. So anything that's fungal at all, the Ethos will consume for food.
That was one of the common denominators when you're listening and reading through these yield contest winners, our national yield contest winners. I had a magazine that showed up last week reading through some of these things. So it's definitely more of a prominent question that I'm getting as an agronomist and trying to help guide people through. That's why we have somebody that's a lot smarter than me walking us through.
That'd be Amy, right?
That would be absolutely Amy. So what other comments do you have on in furrows? Is there anything else out there that sparks your mind that you want to talk about?
When you start messing around with humics and fulvics and some of the biostimulants, just be super careful. You can get some yield boosts out of them, but handleability is something of concern. That's always the first question you should ask when you want to put something into your furrow, because it's around that precious seed. You got to make sure what you want coming out when is what's actually happening with your equipment. So when you start adding a bug with an insecticide, with a biostimulant, with a fertilizer, you start really getting, we call them monkey mixes, right? Like we're really up there. So watch how much you put in there, and multiple modes of action are better than none. So just a bug may not get you anything, but a bug with an insecticide will get you where you want to go. Those things are cumulative once you figure out what works for your farming practices.
Awesome. Well, Joe, do you have any more questions?
Well, Amy, we couldn't let you go without asking about the chemical side of this business. In other words, we know that glyphosate, glufosinate are short, plus a lot of other things. And, we're getting a lot of mixed messages. I guess this year more than ever, possession is 9/10 of the law, you might say. In other words, promises don't really work well when you have to apply herbicides or insecticides or fungicides. So tell us the state of the union, you might say, when it comes to fungicides, insecticides, and herbicides.
We're short on everything. The best thing I can tell people is two things. One, it's not going to get any better. There's not going to be a reprieve here in the next 3 to 6 months. We have no residual inventory in the channel, where normally we're at least 18 months ahead of time. We've never experienced a completely empty channel before. So the recourse is have a plan B. What are you going to do if you don't get the chemical that you want, that you're being told you're going to get? Because chances are, if you do get it, it probably won't be as much as you want either. So have a plan B. Start thinking now about, what am I going to do if I don't get what I think I need? Because there are lots of other options. You just have to think a little bit harder about how you're going to do it.
So like, the first phase is going to be burn down. So if you're limited on glyphosate or glufosinate, you may use what on a burn down? What would be, can you talk to any products that would be a substitute for those?
I'm not up to date on the supply. I would be nervous to say any of them because we're so short on all of them.
Okay.
So it would be something you'd have to talk to your dealer. What do you have here? What do you have that we can use?
So bottom line, the situation is critical.
Yes.
It's not overblown. It's not hype. It's real.
It is uncomfortably real for those of us who are selling these chemicals for a living. Yeah, it's very uncomfortable.
Yeah, well, in Bayer this week, the big news was they put a letter out to all of their dealers declaring force majeure, which is a French term. We call it force manure here because it means something out of their control has occurred and they're not going to be able to supply as much glyphosate, so Roundup. That kind of put a big scare into I would say the ag retailer and just in general. So any comments about that?
I don't think it's going to be the last one that's going to happen. And I think that sometimes they tell you it's coming, and then they just say they don't have it. We've had it happen a couple times the day before. They said, sorry, we just don't have it, and we're not going to have it till next year. So, you don't want to incite panic. It's February. We still have time to maneuver, but it is time. If you don't have your chemical in hand, you need to start making other plans.
Okay. Anything else?
Nope, I think that's awesome.
We appreciate the input as always, and Amy's been talking to us here about next year, and in general, we got maybe some exciting news coming that we'll announce this summer, but right now we can't talk about it yet. But stay tuned. Well, thanks, Amy. Well, that brings us to the corny joke. Now, Amy, you stick around. You might, well, you probably won't, but anyhow, we'll tell it anyhow. I asked a friend in Seattle what the difference was between a state like Washington and one like Florida. He shrugged and says, apples and oranges. Okay. Washington's known for apples. Florida's known for oranges. Okay. All right. All right. Maybe this one's a little better. Okay. How come fish form schools and ants don't?
No idea.
True ants don't go to school. Truants,
Yeah.
They're getting bad when I have to explain them. Well, anyhow, thanks for watching today. We hope that the information we brought you will be beneficial. As always, we hope that you're safe and healthy, and we'll see you next week.